If you've watched any of my other videos, you've probably caught on to the fact that my favorite way to invest in real estate is with long-term rentals. However, there is a huge risk with rentals, and that is vacancy. It can be physical vacancy, which is when you don't have a tenant in your property, or economic vacancy, which is when a tenant is in your property, but they're not actually paying you. In either situation, you end up footing the bills for that property, paying the mortgage, paying the utilities, etc., and not having any income to cover those costs, let alone pay you back on your investment. So as you can see, vacancy is, in my opinion, the #1 killer of investments. So today I want to share with you a little bit about how I've been able to minimize vacancy in my rental properties. I have 24 units and I'm able to turn them over within 2 weeks of a tenant leaving most of the time. And once I get a good tenant in place, they often stay for 3 or 4 years. So let me share with you today 7 ways that I minimize vacancy in my rentals, and I hope it helps you out with your portfolio as well. Minimizing vacancy tip #1, the renewal process. Make sure you have a consistent method for letting tenants know when their lease is about to be up and figuring out what they're gonna do next. So I do this by 60 days ahead of every lease end. I send a renewal notification to the tenant letting them know their lease is gonna end in 60 days and these are their options for renewal. And in that renewal notification, I require that they get back to me at least 30 days before the end of their lease. So by the time we're at 30 days prior to the end of their lease, I've either been notified that they wanna stay and I can send them a lease renewal, they sign that, and we continue on our merry way, or they let me know that they're planning to move and I now have 30 days to work with my team. I have a virtual assistant and a boots on the ground person to make sure that we're getting that unit ready for the turnover process. Minimizing vacancy tip #2, pre-marketing. So I have 30 days once I find out that a tenant's gonna leave, and I can start getting my property marketed and in front of the eyes of potential new tenants. So I instruct my virtual assistant as soon as we know that a tenant's gonna be leaving in 30 days to set up the listing. We use the property management software called Tenant Cloud. He sets up the listing in Tenant Cloud with photos and a description that we have in files, in some team files, and then it sends it out to all these other marketing websites where people are looking for their apartments, apartments.com and Zillow and places like that. And then he begins collecting leads and he does pre-screening for me. A solid 30 days before my tenant has even moved out, we're already marketing the property and starting to collect leads for potential new tenants. Minimizing vacancy tip #3, early showings. Most of the time, I begin showing my units before the previous tenant even leaves. Now, if you have a really messy tenant, or if they haven't taken care of the place and there's a lot of work to be done to the unit to make it good to show, you might not want to do this, but in most cases, because I screen my tenants well, I have really nice units and my tenants are keeping it clean and they might even decorate it really, really cute. It looks even better than it would empty. So I start showing units before my current tenant even leaves. Now, the way that I do this is I make sure that there's a line in my lease agreement that every tenant signs stating that I'm going to be allowed to do this when the end of their lease is coming up. Here is what the line says in my lease. This is in the landlord access section of my lease, and it says, for a period of 60 days prior to the expiration or termination of this lease, landlords shall have the right of access to the property at all reasonable times for the purpose of showing to prospective tenants, buyers, appraisers, lenders, and inspectors. With that one line, I'm able to secure the opportunity to show a unit before my current tenant leaves. If they have any questions about it, I politely direct them to that section of the lease. And we of course make sure that we're being cognizant of their schedule when we set these showings. We're not showing these units every day or even every week. Usually it's maybe 2 or 3 showings on weekends in the last month of their tenancy there. Vacancy minimizing tip #4, tenant screening. Having really good and consistent screening process makes it more likely that you're going to find a quality tenant who will pay you every month, take good care of your unit so it's easier to turn over when it is time, and also hopefully want to stay for more than just 1 year, because moving every single year is kind of tricky. So if you're screening well, it lengthens the amount of time that you keep a tenant in place and also makes the turnover when they do leave that much easier because they're a responsible quality tenant who's taking care of your unit. So I make sure that all of my tenants fill out a full application, they go through a background and credit check, and then my virtual assistant also does rental verifications and employment verification. And I collect a copy of their driver's license and their pay stubs. So having a consistent process that you follow every single time, no exceptions, and make sure that you actually get responses on those rental verifications and employment verifications ensures that you're putting quality tenants in place, which reduces both physical and economic vacancy. Minimizing vacancy tip #5, excellent customer service. When you are a landlord, your tenants are your customers and you need to provide good service, but this does not mean constantly catering to them. So I want to talk about two aspects of great customer service. The first aspect is really making sure that you're getting back to them, you're responsive, you're polite and professional in all your interactions with the tenant. So when a repair request comes in, we get back to them within 24 business hours with at least an answer, even if we can't actually fix it that quickly. And then we keep them updated along the process of getting the fix done for them. And sometimes this happens in just a couple days, and sometimes it's something that takes a week or two, but we're always in communication, we're always professional and polite and responsive. However, the other side to good customer service is making sure that you are consistently upholding your policies with all tenants. You don't want to show favoritism, you don't want to bend or break your own rules. This makes it a lot harder for everyone to understand what is the landlord responsibility versus the tenant responsibility. If people think they can start getting away with things like paying rent really late with no late fees or not paying at all, then your entire business starts to suffer. You can't support your rental portfolio. A tenant not paying over here could mean that you're not paying the mortgage for this other tenant over here. So I am a big believer that a part of good customer service for your tenants is being consistent with your policies. For me, this means I don't waive late fees. I also don't try to gouge people with late fees. My late fees are pretty minimal, but I don't waive them. If the tenant messes something up in the property, I charge them back for that thing that we need to fix. If it's something that I have to fix because it's normal wear and tear, then I do it and I pay it, no questions asked. But if it's something that they caused, then I do charge that back to them. All of these things make sure that I'm running my rentals as a business and that I can provide the best service possible for my tenants. And when you provide really great service, they want to stay. I just had a tenant reach out to me a couple days ago. This is actually what inspired this video today. His lease does not end for another 5 months, but he already reached out saying, hey, I want to talk about my lease renewal options. I'd like to stay for another year. And that is a sign that my team and I are doing a good job managing these rental properties and working with our tenants. Minimizing vacancy tip number 6, tenant incentives. There are two things that I like to do to encourage my tenants to stay. Some of these might be a little bit polarizing. Not everyone agrees with me on these things, but I find that these work well for me. My first tenant incentive to stick around is I allow pets. Now, some people are really against allowing pets in their unit because of damage. I am an animal person, so that might be part of it, but also my units are pretty well set up. I have hardwood floors and tile everywhere. There's no carpet for the animals to be peeing on. I don't often see a lot of pet damage in my units when tenants leave, but I do find that tenants with pets who get comfortable in a spot are more likely to stay longer because not every landlord allows pets. So it really is helpful to tenants to have a place that they enjoy and they know they can have their pet with them. Pets, see? We love them. And I find that allowing pets actually increases my tenant life cycle and decreases vacancy. So again, not everyone's into it, but I enjoy allowing pets. Now I only allow 2 pets per unit. I do have some rules. It's not chaos. There is a non-refundable pet fee, but pets equal longer stays in my experience. The other tenant incentive that I like to provide is I do not raise rent at the first renewal. I think when someone moves, there's a lot of costs involved. They finally get settled, and then that first year is over and all of a sudden rent's already going up. And I enjoy being able to give my tenants an extra year at that same rent rate if they've been a solid, reliable tenant, and I know I want to keep them around. Now, once we get to a second renewal, I will increase the rent, but I don't increase too much. I generally keep my rent increases between 3 and 5%, and I really try to base it on what's happening in the market. I also show them in their renewal options what market rents are. Oftentimes they've increased a little bit above what my rent increase will be to them. So they see that even though on that second renewal there is a small increase, it's not as bad as it would be if they were just moving in for the first time. I'm giving them a little bit of break because they've been a good tenant. So no rent increase the first year, and then keeping my rent increases between 3 and 5% after that. Minimizing vacancy tip number 7, team incentives. So if you have a team around you, whether you hired them and they work for your company or they're just vendors or contractors that you work with, you want to find ways to incentivize them to help you keep good tenants around. So I have a virtual assistant who does pretty much anything that you can do from a computer or phone for me in my business. He really takes about 80 to 90% of the day-to-day tasks of managing my rental properties. So he's a huge influence in my tenant's experience with my company. So I incentivize him. His bonuses are structured around keeping tenants happy and minimizing vacancy. So here's how it works. His biggest bonus comes from when tenants renew. He has a dollar amount he makes every time a tenant renews for another year. Second, he gets a bonus anytime we're able to fill a unit with less than 2 weeks of vacancy. So if a tenant moves out on June 15th and then I have a new tenant in by June 1st, that's the next step in his bonuses. So it's slightly less than at least renewal, but still a good amount. And then the third amount is if he's able to fill a vacant unit within 1 month of a tenant leaving. So if a tenant leaves on July 1st, I should have a new tenant in place by August 1st for him to get that next bonus level. There is no bonus after that point. If a unit is empty for more than a month, that's really not a good situation for us, and so there's no bonus at that point. This is the only bonus that my virtual assistant gets, and it's all based on tenant happiness as displayed by tenants choosing to stay, or minimizing vacancy by having a really streamlined and quick turnover process. And that's how I make sure that my team is aligned with minimizing vacancy in my rental properties. So those are the 7 ways that I minimize vacancy with my rental portfolio: a good renewal process, pre-marketing a unit, early showings, good tenant screening, excellent customer service, tenant incentives, and team incentives. I really hope this was helpful to you. If you have any other ways that you minimize vacancy in your rental units, I would love to hear about them in the comments below. Also, as always, make sure you drop any questions you have in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe to this channel and feel free to let me know if there are other topics you'd love to see covered here. Keep learning, keep growing, and have fun.